G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks of Ukraine War Update for the 2nd of September 2025. As we enter a new season, we are likely to enter a new phase of the war. And this has been indicated by Zelensky, who is probably looking at a campaign of terror where he aims to conduct more deep strikes into Russia, because he does not want to end this war unless he can take all of Ukraine back. Even though Western Ukraine rebelled against him. They will never accept him. He does not wish to accept that. Most people in the world do not seem to accept that the Donbass is in open rebellion against Ukrainian rule. That is the problem that most people don't seem to want to address. That he is basically no longer the elected leader of Ukraine, and that he pretty much every day continues to make threats about deep strikes into Russia, which is a clear indication to me he does not want to end the war. He's not talking about security guarantees. He wants to target Russian oil refineries and pipelines. Now, key events today, there was fighting where in various parts of the front line. Ukraine always accuses Russia of only attacking civilians. Though the Crimean Tatar Center, a human rights organization, reports that there was deaths, allegedly, but there's been no other organization that has reported on this or said where or how this occurred. And this is common for criticisms and attacks on Russia. And again, a lot of them are never backed up with any proof. But the problem is, people are judging by reputation alone. And that is, of course, distorting reality. We have to stick to facts, what we can prove. Nobody wants to talk about the deaths or disappearances in Ukraine. So you can't take these human rights organizations seriously anymore. They are politically motivated. The EU is going to increase the amount of satellites to supposedly, after an incident today where Ursula von der Leyen's jet was allegedly suffered GPS interference. But if it passed, it was plain interference by Russia. Well, if Russia was engaged, if you fly near a war zone, which Bulgaria is near a war zone, you're going to get interference and electronic jamming. But Bulgaria is not near Russia; it's near Ukraine. Are you telling me Russian jammers are so powerful that they can cross all of Ukraine and not cause any problems with any other aircraft but one? But of course, that's the problem. People will believe this. GPS jamming, the planes that was delivered Russian interference. For all we know, it was a result of Ukrainians jamming of Russian projectiles. We don't know if they were missiles or drones, but there were definitely missiles and drones and other activities going on across the front. The diplomatic situation is slowly declining. President Putin has pointed out that he blames the West for this war, that they provoked Russia. Again, this is a repeat, I believe, from yesterday's story. do not know why they're repeating yesterday's story. It just suddenly occurred to me that they did. Ukraine is talking about the Russian aggression and, you're never going to make peace if you keep whining. Europe is whining. Germany in particular is whining. Ukraine is whining. And then always France is whining. What will it take for people in Europe to stop whining? You're not children. So many people keep saying, Zelensky attacks Russia. Russia retaliates. And then people say, but Putin's got to end this war. Tell this to Putin. Stick it to him. You're not fighting this war. You're not protecting you're not protecting the UK, you're not protecting France, you're not protecting Germany, you're not even protecting democracy. I think people just are so selfish that they want a little win. Ooh, Putin's got a bat. I want to hurt Putin so I can feel good. If you go look, we're in a war because in 2014, probably something that was decades in the making, Barack Obama, with the help of George Soros and others, toppled the government of Ukraine. That destabilized the region. There was a civil uproar. Russia, to protect its interest, secured Crimea. They have a military base there. They have hundreds of years of history. Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire. Parts of Ukraine were Russia until communism. And the Russian peoples rebelled against the rebellion. They felt cheated that they had won the election and then the Ukrainians decided to steal the election. And the Ukrainian opposition, instead of siding against the coup, took European money to back the Euromaidan organisation. So the coup was rewarded. And since then, there have been nothing but crackdowns and arrests, unarrest, murders, and Ukraine has degenerated to the point where Russia stepped in, believing that it was protecting the interests of the Russian-speaking people of Ukraine. And not once has Western media, beyond some YouTubers, gotten off their ass and told the world. But the world isn't listening. The world doesn't care. People out there don't care. So the few who listen to this message, congratulations. You have at least some humanity left in you. Most of the world seems to be eager to hurt Putin. That they somehow feel that they have the right, and only they have the right to decide who is in government and who is not, and which country is good, which people are bad. And it's all based around, and that is the ultimate selfishness. It is colonialism. Whether it's India, China, America, doesn't matter. Okay? There's a lot of people who have an interest in the Ukraine war, and they want a Ukraine war, and support a Ukraine war, while at the same time claiming they're not against the war. I'm not saying Xi is pro or against. I think there are plenty of people in China who both want the war because of political gains by China, and they want to enter the war now to stop, simply because they want to stop the bleeding of money came with the support, right? They feel that there's nothing more to be gained. But Russia is hit after the attacks on Russian gas and oil. Russia has hit Ukraine hard. We know that it will not alter Ukraine's resolve to fight. Bombings rarely do. Now we know that Russia has lost some territory due to Ukrainian counteroffensives, but that has made very insignificant, not even 1%. It's insignificant for the cost of lives. And yet in most areas, Russia continues, though they have not made advances in the north. Oh, yes, they have. They've made advances in the north. Not significant, however, but they have made advances. Fighting is resumed around Chavez Yar, and fighting towards Kronovinskaya has continued. The little bit of land down here captured. Little bit of land here captured, although not much. Captured a little bit here. Fighting continues here, unabated. This little bit of land loss has not stopped the fighting, and Russia's fighting in other areas. So the Ukrainians move in, dig in, and now find themselves, the Russians can go around them. And the Russians will have basically advanced in other areas. So they're now on the outskirts of Pavlovsk fighting, even though they've been pushed back here at Yudachin. They've advanced in other areas. Okay. The little counter-offensive here, wiped out. Russia's now fighting heavily on this area. The Ukrainian counter-offensive has failed. The Ukrainians now are on the defensive yet again. So here you go. Not much. But again, not much, but a tiny bit of land here and there every day adds up. Whereas Ukraine, wow, we've liberated. They say Russia's taken 135 villages this year, and then somebody said, no, only 130 because we took back 5. And then somebody pointed out, well, they've taken a few of them back, haven't they? So it's still a net. So 135 down to 130, and they're already, that's probably where it's at. But this offensive tomorrow, let's see what happens. Because in most of them, 24 to 48 hours later, there's no sign of them. It is what it is. The accusations will always continue. If people are pro-Ukrainian, they're not going to believe what anybody else says but Ukraine. If they're pro-Russian, they're only going to believe the Russian sources. And this, of course, is the problem with believing without thinking. So many people, worship Noam Chomsky, yet immediately fall in line with Ukraine going, we believe you, Zelensky. If you cannot apply critical thinking to your own side, stop demanding that everybody else believe that you're woke, because you're about as aware of reality as a LSD addict. Now, this ain't a wake-up call to people where that the West is pushing Russia into the hands of Xi to divide the world into binary, because European politics in particular is just basically binary. Basically the childish politics of left, right, good, bad, me, you, right, wrong. The moronic guide to politics. Everybody I don't like is a Nazi. Anybody who opposes globalism is a Nazi. Putin is talking about, Xi and Putin held a meeting where they're going to work together, support each other's national development, prosperity, safeguard international justice, equity, promote a fairer, rational system of global governance. And they're, of course, talking about China's favourite boogeyman, Japan. It's the problem with communism. They're always stuck in the past. They exist basically on the copium of their so-called heroes of the revolution, their past glories, their past victories. And they're stuck in the past, right? The boogeyman is always, the boogeyman from the past is all under every bed. We have to root out the boogeyman. So it doesn't matter what Japan does, it's always going to be the boogeyman. China and Europe, Europe and Russia, they're both trapped in this binary mindset. And this is the problem in it. The left, they always need a boogeyman. In Europe, it's Russia. In Russia, in China, it's Japan. In Russia, the boogeyman's NATO. In America, the boogeyman is Russia. Well, all these people who scream about the boogeyman being Russia are ignoring the Chinese influence peddling campaigns that put Clinton into office and many others. Priska. They're trying to put Zohan into office. Look at the Confucius organizations behind Zohan. Now, Slovakia has come out supporting the standardization of Russian relations. That he does. Robert Fico has said he doesn't understand several EU decisions. He's told he at a meeting he flew to Robert Fico, of course, has met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Beijing, which he's expressed his that he doesn't understand the several EU decisions, and supports basically a standardization between the two countries. There isn't much there. It's quite clear Ursula von der Leyen is a Russophobe. Merkel's Ghost 2.0 wants war. He's talking about conscription, talking about building up German tanks. Germany's got hundreds of tanks in disrepair because they sent them to Ukraine. They're some of them damaged beyond repair. We don't know. NATO is in a mess, in a disarray. France trying to push standardization equipment and removal of America from the supply chains. You've tried that before. Look what happened. I mean, Europe is in a frenzy of insanity, of self-destruction and self-mutilation and self-harm. It doesn't invest in itself. It's obsessed with foreigners. And these people who are obsessed with foreigners will never move to a foreign country. They want them to move in, not the other way, This obsession with global justice is a disease throughout the world. Pleasing it's all human ego stroking. Now, ex-President Yankovic, you may actually remember Viktor Yankovic. He was the one Obama threw out of office with the 2014 coup, which sparked the unrest in Ukraine, which led to Russia seizing Crimea, the civil war in Donbass, the deaths of over 1 million Ukrainians at the hands of Ukrainian armed forces and security, Ukrainian secret police and extrajudicial murders becoming the norm, Russia only entering the conflict in to try and bring stability to its borders, end hostilities. They only formally invaded in 2022 after repeated dares from the West to invade, saying that Putin was weak. Even, peace deal after peace deal collapsed, and Ukraine constantly blaming Russia. Nothing's ever our fault, says Zelensky, who ran on claiming past peace deals. He would honour past, he'd make peace with Russia. He would bring Ukraine into prosperity. And yet, now he's saying, Yanukovych is saying now that Ukraine's on a direct path to civil war. He was actually pro-EU. He didn't want to join NATO. And Obama threw him out of office. Now he's the fourth president of Ukraine since the end of the Soviet Union. He served as prime minister several times. He's also a member of the Ukrainian parliament several times. He's currently in exile in Russia. And he was a Soviet politician as well. He was in. Now, according to Yuri Yusupov, the Russian and US presidents, despite their conversations and formal talks, did not have an agreement on a trilateral summit of when, where, or how. They had only begun arrangements for this meeting, for a three-way summit. They want to raise this to the level of direct talks. No decision has been finalized for talks between Moscow and Kiev. They often hear and make sounds that people understand to be that they are talking. Like you hear negotiators coming out. But most of those negotiations, prisoner exchanges and body exchanges. The usual raising of concerns between the two parties. Ukraine will say, stop attacking our infrastructure. And Russia says, well, you've got to stop attacking our oil. And Zelensky says, oh, we're only defending ourselves. We have the right to defend ourselves. We're the victims. Even though Ukraine is the one who shelled Donetsk. And the politician who was murdered recently was the was the one responsible for sparking the 2022 war. Though Zelensky had a hand in it by not doing anything, as well as FSB, who was probably organising everything. But Zelensky's the problem by not disbanding these private militias. But there is talks about what Putin wants. NATO is his red line. Now, apparently, part of the Ukrainian security guarantees cannot come at the expense of Russian security, that it cannot be pretty much a European security without Russia. There can be no European security without Russia, as he said with Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, that Russia's only goal is protecting its interests. This is not our aggressive behaviour, but responding to aggression. Despite the leaders of Poland, France, Germany, that they signed guarantors. Days later, there was a coup, right? When Soviet Union break up, there was some guarantors signed to help facilitate peace in Ukraine, right? Break up to dismantle nuclear weapons, etc. Then, of course, once Poland, France, Germany, they signed guarantors, an agreement between the government and the opposition of Ukraine 2014. A few days later, they took a coup and they did nothing. They didn't lift a finger to return Ukraine to the normal political process. Nothing. Then they began supporting those who carried out the coup. NATO has attempted to expand, despite promising there would be no such expansion. Russia has dismantled its military since the end of the Soviet Union. There was only a military build-up after the 2014 coup, which led to many deals, treaties, either not being renewed or ending. We can sit here and blame everybody and nobody at the same time. Because if you blame Trump, the Trump supporters will say, no, it's Putin. If you blame Putin, you come off as a Russophobe, because you cannot blame Putin alone. All right? No one person made... These are all decisions of rapid escalation that started in Ukraine, that started with Barack Obama. And the left just won't accept that, because once you get this hero mindset of hero worship, and what are you worshipping? Are you worshipping him because he's a black man? Are you worshipping because he promised you peace, hope, and change? Are you just caring that your side won? It doesn't seem to be something the left can define. They cannot define what they're supporting. They cannot define what... They're always in vague terms like equity. Basically, they're saying if somebody's more successful than you, they must be torn down. That's not fair. Everybody's complaining about the wealth gap. Doesn't make sense. If somebody's wealthy and continues to get wealthy, why should they be punished for everybody else? People who talk about equity, they don't watch my channel. That's not equity. They watch the same garbage over and over again. Well, they're not being equitable with their decision making. They're not giving other people a chance. Instead of buying their coffee mug from somebody else, they don't buy it off me. How is that equitable? How's that fair? They don't have anything other than glib statements. And this comes down to Orwell. Orwell warned us about this false virtue in which the party is always right. They just believe everything the party says, that they will fall for any slogan because they're just not thinking. They hear and obey. They don't think. We are in an Orwellian fascist time where, however, we are seeing the slow destruction of the UN global power grab. People don't want to be under UN rule. The Russians don't want to be under UN rule. The Chinese don't want to be under UN rule. But neither do the Japanese, the Koreans, most of Asia, most of Africa, most of Europe. The only people who like the UN are people who are benefiting off the UN, like India. China's not benefiting off the UN anymore. There's a power tussle between UN and the globalists, between those who are aligned with India and those who are aligned with China. And you've got too many trying to align with either. This polarizing, it's like having two girlfriends. Eventually, they're going to have a punch-up. You can't be friends with China and India and say you're a US ally. No. You can trade with those countries, but you can't say, oh, we're your bestest buddies. You're not some king with a harem and that only works when you have them hammered with you. Once, if that wears off, if you ain't the king no more, you think they're going to stick around? We have to pull out, right, and see the insignificance. The battlefield there's Europe. The battlefield is probably the most significant in size since World War II, but it is nowhere near the scale of World War II. World War II had millions along a much greater front. This has just over 1 million. Predominant, and most of the people on the front probably aren't fighting. You have only 135 points of contact along 1,000 kilometres. Over 600 miles of nothing. Sporadic fighting maybe, but nothing on a scale. This is a tiny conflict. Very, very sad, however, and it is a sad loss of life that is being continued. Not by the Americans. America has asked, and in order to show defiance, in order to show that I am, this is politics. The more organizations you have, the more defiance, the more contrarians you have, and inversely, you get less success. Right? The more organizations you have, the less success you have, because you're spreading influence. That's why Europe has tried to unite as one, but it doesn't work because they don't have a common unifying message. So they create this artificial one, the liberal world order. And that is failing. And the liberal new world order, the liberal order is not new. It probably dates back to the Roman Empire, probably back to the Greek Empire. The natural order, however, is that people of nationality have national borders, and that Ukraine should by now have had the maturity and exercised some common sense and ended this war. But Zelensky's such a proud man, and so many people who hate Putin are so proud. But of course, the vast majority of people who support and watch other channels, and they're not going to urge Ukraine over and over again to fight. They won't go and put their lives on the front line. And I don't care how much money they throw at it. Money does not win wars. These people are just as liable for the people who egg on Ukraine are just urge them on are just as bad as the people who urge on Russia from the sidelines. They are equal, especially those who profit off this war through fundraising. Right, there are all these organizations that are fundraising. You ask yourself, how does Zelensky make $384,000 a year from a country with an average wage of $5,600? The destruction of Ukraine is is blood on the hands of everybody urging this war to continue instead of actively working against it. And I reckon because I'm anti-war, people won't. But please, the right isn't about conquest. Jesus wasn't pro-war. So please, like, share, and subscribe. Zelensky is anti-Christian. So please, support me on Patreon. Buy my books, buy my merch. Thank you for listening. See you all in the next video. Bye for now.